So the title of our paper that I wrote with my colleague Michelle White, who is in the room, so please direct all the questions to her, is the reusability of resources in language-specific contexts, the SADiLaR repository as a case study. So um, I can maybe just mention SADiLaR is the South African Center for Digital Language Resources, where I am a researcher and Michelle is our data scientist. But just an overview of the article, what sparked the discussion paper that I went with the idea to Michelle was that I was convinced that language resources are being reused, but they are often invisible when you try and track how they are reused. So current measures of reuse rely heavily on explicit data citations, as we've heard from previous speakers already, that citing data sets proves to be either difficult or something that, maybe is not part of the author guidelines, or somebody doesn't think about citing data necessarily, because in practice, researchers often cite publications instead of the data sets. So either postgrad theses or the articles that was the maybe the inspiration or the final output, the actual academic output that's cited instead of the data itself. And then the use of resources often happen without citing them at all. Or researchers are unaware of data sets being originally from a repository. So as a result, repository impact is systematically underestimated due to these reasons. So we wanted to consider SADiLaR's own repository. So SADiLaR has a field-specific repository for language data sets that uses handles as their persistent identifiers. And ultimately it proved very difficult to find reuse of the data sets in our repository. And our process involved manually searching academic publications for references to SADiLaR resources, whether they were tools. So SADiLaR also hosts tools for people, for researchers to use, but we also have static data sets in our repository. So our process proved labor intensive, incomplete because of the manual nature of it, and difficult to reproduce. The way we canvassed for articles written by people we know normally would submit data sets, or we find at conferences speaking about our data sets. So many instances of resource use were only found through indirect evidence rather than formal dataset citations. So for example, people mentioning the resource or mentioning the website or mentioning that the resource is in the repository. And this is just one of the images, one of the graphs from our article that you can access in the full article, just showing a bit of a distribution of the papers, the articles, or the publications we found and the way they were used. So we distinguish between the publication actually, describing the data set creation or tool creation based on training data that's available on the repository, tool assessments, resource assessments, and then direct research where the data set is part of is the focus of the research. So our recommendation at the end of the paper was that better dataset citation practices necessarily improve the specifically mentioning the CLARIN data citation guidelines in our article. And also I can mention that I had a conversation with one of the editors-in-chief of the Journal of the Digital Humanities Association of Southern Africa, And the CLARIN data citation guidelines is now part of the author guidelines on the website. So that is a happy moment, and we will see whether it will have an impact. And yes, creating greater awareness of existing language resources, improved methods for tracking resources would be great, and then viewing repositories as active research infrastructure and not simply storage platforms. So thank you very much. That is my last slide, and just a short link for the presentation and one for the paper that you can just access on JOHD's website. Thank you, everyone.